bravest woman that ever walked Wales or the world or anywhere else for that matter. And Ceridwen, she had 2 children, twins, Ceridwen and Morvan. Now, of course, she had high expectations for these children, hoping that they would follow in her footsteps. And Ceridwen, she did. She was pretty and wise, so wise. She was definitely going to follow after her mother. But Morvan, as good as his sister was, he was bad. He had a deep badness inside him. It was like a black mist. It was like poison poured out from him from the moment that he was born. Now, Ceridwen was a powerful sorceress, and she tried potion after potion and spell after spell, but nothing would work. 18 years went by, and by that time she had tried everything she could think of. Eventually she decided, okay, if I can't make him good, I will make him wise. I will make him even wiser than I am. And so she cooked up a potion to end all potions. I mean, it was incredible. It took a whole year for her to put together. She had to pick plants and flowers at exactly the right moment. It was like the most complex jigsaw puzzle that you can imagine. Just as the moons and the planets and the stars were in the right alignment, she would pick them. And it took her a whole year to do it. And then she would put all of these things into a cauldron. And then she would have to keep that cauldron at exactly the right temperature. And she would have to mix it and mix it and mix it without stopping for a year and a day. And then when a year and a day had gone by, the first 3 drops of that potion would make her son the wisest man in all of the world. After that, the rest of it would be turned to poison. So this is what she did. She collected all of these things. She put them in this enormous cauldron that was so big she had to build a great big barn outside to fit it into. But she couldn't do it alone. She needed help. She went down to the town. She went down to Llanfair Ceridwen. And there on the edge of the lake, there was a man, a blind man, perfect. His senses would be so attuned, he would be able to feel the temperature of that cauldron. And so he agreed. With him was a little boy, his grandson, a little boy with nothing in his head. It was like a sieve. All day long, he would sit on the edge of the water and throw stones into it, watching the ripples like a collie dog. Perfect. He could stir the cauldron. He wouldn't get bored. And so she took them back to her house and they set to work day after day after day. And they didn't stop. Every time they got tired, Ceridwen, she would put a potion on them. She would put a spell on them to keep them awake. And so it went on month after month after month. And then a whole year went by. And now this is the unfortunate bit. A whole year went by and it was just as the moment that it was going to go into the next day when it would be a year and a day. And this tiredness came over Ceridwen. Whatever she did, she just couldn't stop it. It was like it was more powerful than she was. She found her eyelids drooping and she fell into a deep sleep. And you know how it is when you're really tired and somebody falls asleep next to you, you can't control it either. And this is what happened to the little boy, Gwion Bach. He found his eyelids dropping heavier and heavier and heavier. And this great stick that he'd been mixing the potion with, he fell asleep onto it. And as he fell asleep onto it, it sort of flipped up. And a ladleful of this potion, it went flying up into the air and it splashed down onto the edge of the cauldron. And as it did, 3 little splashes, they flew out and they landed on his hand and they burnt him and he woke up with a scream. Ow! He put his hand in his mouth. And almost as soon as his lips touched that potion, he could feel it. He could feel it bubbling inside him from his toes to the top of his head. He felt full. He felt full of thoughts. It was exciting. If you can imagine that you've never had a thought in all of your life and suddenly you've got all of them. You've got all of the thoughts. You know everything that has been, everything that is, and everything that will be. And one of the things that he knew that would be is that in a minute, Ceridwen would wake up and she would see that he had had the 3 drops of the potion and she would be furious. So he climbed down from his little ladder. He crept out of the barn. And as soon as he was just enough clear, he began to run. He ran and he ran and he got to the top of the brow of the hill and that's when he heard it. Ceridwen had woken up and she was wild. Her hair was everywhere. Her eyes were wild. Now, she hadn't slept for a long time. And suddenly, that tiny little bit of darkness in Ceridwen, it came out. Probably that same little bit of darkness that went into her son in the first place. That's probably where it came from. She was furious. She was going to kill that Guionbach. Come back here, Guionbach. And little Guion, he ran as fast as he could, but his legs were tired. He'd been awake for a whole year. And then suddenly, his body went into a different speed. Suddenly, he was running faster than he knew he could. He looked down, and his hands weren't there anymore. They were brown little furry things. Guionbach had turned into a hare. He was flying so fast. This is wonderful. I love being wise. I love having this power. And then he turned around, and there was Ceridwen. But it wasn't as she was before. Suddenly she was a greyhound, and she was muscular, and she was strong, and she was faster than him, and she was bounding after him in that way that greyhounds do. And suddenly she was on him, and she leapt up into the air, and she wrapped her teeth around him, and he slithered out from between them. He transformed into a salmon, and he leapt up into the air, which was lucky because just there in front of him was a river. And what was even more lucky is this river was in space, and he dived down into the water, and he was rushing. He'd never swum so fast in his life. He was rushing through the water. He was free. But then all of a sudden he felt this gnashing at his tail. He looked around, and Ceridwen had transformed into a great big she-otter, a really strong one, and she was swimming after him, and she was biting at his tail. And she was just about to grab hold of him when he managed to slip away from her and jump up into the air, you know, in that way that salmon do. It's beautiful. But he kept on going up and up and up and up and up. And suddenly he realized he'd transformed into a bird. Whoa, this was good. But Ceridwen, he turned round to look for her. And of course, she had transformed again. He saw this beak coming out of the water, this strong neck, these strong wings. She had transformed into eagle. He was just a crow. She came up through the air like an arrow. Up, 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 up. She was going to get him any minute. He looked down. Down below him, he could see a great big pile of wheat. Perfect. Immediately, he transformed himself into a grain of wheat, and he fell down, 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 right into the middle. 1 of a million. There was absolutely no way she could get him now. Ceridwen had transformed into a chicken, and she was strutting up this pile of wheat. And she was looking around, looking around, looking around, and then her eyes, they fixed on one particular grain of wheat. Very good, Guionbach, she said, but not that good. I suppose because you've got such an empty head, all that wisdom didn't fill it up very much. I've got you. That was the end of Guionbach. But then a week went by, and her breasts were beginning to feel a bit sore. And she was racking her brain, and she just couldn't think how it could be possible. And she was wise. I mean, she was a goddess. She felt her stomach. There was definitely a baby growing in there. Oh, Guionbach, you are a clever little thing. Guion had transformed into a baby in her stomach. Well, he was safe, he was warm, but he was trapped. You might be okay for now, Guionbach, but don't think you're going to take more than one breath before I cut your head off. 9 months went by. Her body strained. In her hand, she held a knife, sharpened to a point, and she waited, and she pushed, and she strained, and she pushed, and she strained, and out of her body came the little baby, and she held this sharp knife above him, and she was just about to bring it down into his heart. I'm going to cut out your heart. Before she could, she was struck through the heart. Struck through the heart with love. Oh, Guionbach, you are a clever little thing. Okay, you win. And with that, she wrapped up little Guionbach in hundreds of oilskins. She put him into a coracle. She went down to the Dovey estuary, and she cast him out into the ocean. Carry him away, ocean. I never want to see this boy again. And with that, she turned and she went home. And so the ocean, it did carry him and carried him and carried him for about a week. But it was a little bit naughty, the ocean, because it carried him around in a great big circle. And sure enough, a week later, that little coracle, it washed up almost in the spot that she had cast it out from. And it just so happened that on this particular day, Elfin, King Elfin, was out fishing, clearing his head, trying to clear his mind for battle, when this little coracle came washing in, and in it was a bundle. He waded in, he unwrapped this bundle. Treasure, he was thinking. Treasure, treasure. It was a baby. A baby, you're not treasure. You're nothing but trouble. Oh, I'm not trouble, said the baby. Elfin almost jumped out of his skin. The baby could speak. What kind of witchcraft is this? Who's put this spell on you? My mother, said the baby. What is your name, little one? My name, said the baby, my name. I think it's time I had a new name. My name was Guion Bach, but I feel that I've outgrown that now. My name will be Taliesin. And I am treasure to you, Elfin. I am going to bring you great riches, and we are going to have many adventures. You see, I am very wise. I am so wise, in fact, that I know everything that has been, everything that is, and everything that will be. Wow, this was too good to be true, especially when you're about to go into battle. And so Elfin, he put the baby into his saddlebag, and off they went. And they did have many adventures, and there was much fortune. And there are many, many, many more stories I could tell you, but we don't have time for them now. Thank you very much. Should we all have a little 10-minute break? Thank you.